Love music, love life.
Extraordinary things. Imagine a life with zero worries. Imagine a world where you're relaxed and free, where all your dreams become
I see my
reality,
hell.
and all you
I
need
just wash my.
is to do your wish. Be more. It pays financials. No stress when it's time to pay.
With paid financials, you have zero worries when it's time to pay your bills, rent, school fees, and vacation. We'll be here making it easy for you.
Visit our website www.pagefinancials.com or call 0163172243. Page Financials, taking you further.
The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Get quick
Studio is live.
access to
Mike's are up.
loans from Page Financials.
Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. And this is Smooth 98.1, Smooth Breakfast with me, Valentine Ohu. Aya is unavoidably absent. We are observing social distancing. We're being responsible. So she gets to rest this week and actually just remote work or work from home. In the meantime, here on Smooth Breakfast on Freshly Pressed 981, which is a segment of the show Smooth Breakfast that you're listening to right now, you can communicate with us by sharing messages on WhatsApp 0809444091. We're streaming live on YouTube. Go to the youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. So just go to YouTube and type smooth 981 FM Lagos to join the conversation. On Twitter, we're at smooth 981 FM. The hashtag is freshly pressed 981. And I'm streaming live on my Instagram handle at Valentine OHU. Joining us this morning is Justin EJ, the Lone Ranger. Good morning.
Morning, Lagos.
And he's ready. You're like a soldier, just ready for war.
Well,
With
can't be
arms,
too careful.
apparently.
Stay safe.
Conversations will be around these headlines from different papers. Anxiety as National Assembly members resume plenary today. Coronavirus, returning Nigerians not observing self-isolation according to a minister. NSC closing the store, the trading floors, and going remote. Federal government closing land borders. Federal government possibility of federal government deploying police and military to track contact persons. Oyoita's updates with the court case. Nigeria has less than 500 ventilators, according to some experts, and the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee coming up with an agreement on how much money they would share. All right, guys, let's go. The first one from the Punch newspaper: anxiety as National Assembly members resume plenary today. Um, Much of the anxiety is from the fact, well, it's born out of the fact that some of the members have been flying in and out of the country. Some lawmakers apparently failed to go through screening at the airports on arrival from foreign trips. Recently, we know they always travel. This has led to anxiety among the members themselves because plenary starts today. Justin, if it were you, how would you feel?
Being a what? Being a
Being a
senator.
member, a
Or
senator,
being
yeah. And you know your friends just returned from some of these hot spots.
we would have some hot words for each other after they must have come back from quarantine. You know, the one thing that you could argue is a positive from this whole scenario is it's exposing the underbelly of society, generally speaking. So let's quickly remind ourselves that senators are full-time employees.
Yeah.
They're not part-time. We don't have a part-time legislature in Nigeria. We have a full-time legislature. So first things first, people traveling up. I don't know that I can just up and travel anytime I like, right? Without, I mean, my employers. So these guys are expected to be in Abuja making laws for the country, but they're always gallivanting. Now we're in a situation where they should exercise leadership. This situation calls for a high level of decorum from everybody, and lawmakers are coming back into the country and refusing to observe basic guidelines, which is isolate yourself for a 14-day period, be before you reintegrate back into society. And it's shocking. No, it's not. It's not shocking because I mean, what I mean by it's not shocking is we've become used to the absurd around here. So I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. Stupid will do as stupid do, and that's what they've done. Now the question is, what's going to happen? Because there are stories here about ordinary citizens too who are refusing to do the same thing. So we've heard stories about people coming back from outside the country, right, and refusing to go into isolation. So, again, I will take a multifaceted view. First of all, you have to be responsible people. Do the right thing. That's on the one part. But this is a society is a social contract, right? The government has a role to play. Have you seen those images of isolation centers?
Yes.
Some of those places, oh my God, they look like a zoo, right? So it stands to reason that nobody would want to put themselves in that situation. So the government also failed in making adequate preparations for keeping people, right, in isolation. And I'm saying that to say the issue of self-quarantine should never have come up. Look at what Ghana is doing. We have a very fragmented economy. We have a largely informal economy. People will not willingly go into self-isolation. The government should not abdicate its responsibility of enforcing the law, enforcing the guidelines. People should have been taken from the airport to government-provided facilities. Some African countries did the same thing. Where you don't have dedicated facilities, there are airports, there are hotels all around the airport that the government could have requisitioned for this purpose, right? Put people in quarantine for the 14-day period. Why was it necessary to do that? We all know that we do not have the infrastructural capability to deal with community spread, which unfortunately is the situation we're facing now.
In some countries,
in Ghana, don't go too
in
far.
Ghana,
Charlie,
yes.
as you land, a bus load of soldiers is waiting. They take you to a hotel, check you in, you observe the period before you go back home. That was the way to go. Now the minister, I was watching this we're almost going to be skipping stories because almost all the stories are the same.
Interwoven.
Yeah. So the Minister of Health yesterday, I watched that press briefing, and he actually was saying, we can't contain an outbreak, because somebody asked a question to the effect that what happens at grassroots level. All this talk we're talking about the major urban centers. If these things get to grassroots level, what would you do?
The informal sector, the markets.
The markets.
Yeah, the Obalendes.
Thank you. This is why the whole rhetoric about observing social distance, right? We have to define what social distancing means in Nigeria. Is it the people that enter the mulues? Is it people?
Justin, beyond just explaining what social distancing is, I mean, yes, all well and good. You explain social distancing to a market store owner and tell her to social distance when that's her source of
That's exactly what I mean, Valentine.
How do you expect that person to cope with that?
That's exactly what I mean.
Afford it.
In the context of Nigeria, what you see on CNN when the Americans are talking about social distancing, when the Europeans are talking about social distancing, if you bring that into our context here, it takes on a whole different coloration. So you have to ask yourself, in Nigeria, what is social distancing? Because there are people who will not feed if they do not go out into those crowded marketplaces. Again, this goes back to, you should have taken this into account in preparing and planning. The minister, I was watching him yesterday and I was tearing my hair out.
That's the Minister of Information.
No, Minister of Health.
Okay, Minister of Health. Yes, then we'll get to the part where Lai Mohammed spoke.
He said, the Minister of Health said, oh, we were watching this thing when it was unfolding in China and we were preparing. And my question is, what were you preparing? Hope is not a strategy, right? How were you preparing? Were you building up your stock of ventilators? Were you beefing up manpower in the health sector? Were you creating isolation centers? Were you importing test kits? What exactly were you doing to prepare? The answer is absolutely nothing. So now you're on the back foot and you're reacting to something you had all the time to get ahead of.
Speaking of ventilators, I'm glad you brought that up because according to the Punch newspaper story that I have here before me, Nigeria has less than 500 ventilators for coronavirus patients. A certain hospital in Lagos apparently said was, one of the highly placed officials there with names withheld, said they have only two ventilators, only one was working. And that if they have special cases, they refer them to Luth. You have, from different states, you have different numbers.
That's the Aurelia Agege General Hospital. Let's name them now. Like, Aurelia Agege General, if you live in that area and anything happens, please just be going straight to Luth because they don't have only 500 ventilators, only 500, right? And they are unevenly distributed I can almost bet you. So we have a rundown of hospitals here in Lagos. I mean, Punch did an analysis of hospitals that actually have ventilators. Really, Agege General Hospital doesn't have any. Luth has 15, right? Ikorodu General Hospital has none. Imo State Teaching Hospital, okay, they went nationwide with this. Imo State
Yes.
Teaching Hospital has 2, but 1 is functioning.
Bagada General Hospital has 4.
Thank you. And it goes on and on. If you read the Punch, Ebuta Meta Federal Medical Center has 5, and so it continues. Now think about it. Five less than 500 all over the country. How many test centers do we have? Presently 5. They're trying to make a 6th one. You had time to prep for this. We didn't. So now, as with all things, we are reacting. If you ask me, from the look of things, we're in community spread phase already. And again, what is social distancing to the people in Ebuta Meta, in Agege, in Oshodi, right? In those crowded areas, where people live in face me, I face you, where people have shared toilets. You know, middle class people, urban center people talk about these things, and we don't stop to think about what it means for the greater part of the population. People share toilets. People don't have pipe-borne water. What is hand washing? What is in that context?
So the reason why we're Justin and I are highlighting the issue of the lack of ventilators, enough number to go around in the country, a country that has, according to the experts, less than 500 or not more than 500, is the fact that ventilators are where you have a coronavirus patient or somebody who's tested positive to coronavirus. In the severe stages, you have difficulty in breathing. And these ventilators are the equipment that's used by medical professionals to provide mechanical ventilation by moving breathable air in and out of the lungs to aid them and just extend their life and give them a chance of survival, which is why we're talking about this for 500. Messages here on WhatsApp. MI says, from Akoka, they should be anxious because some of the colleagues, speaking about senators who started plenary today, some of their colleagues allegedly were too big to submit to screening. If you cook for the village, they will finish it. But if the village cooks for you, you will never finish it. The bar is on the floor. Hashtag take responsibility. Kenny Hetuge says, Nigeria should have shut down borders and preached social distancing when we had the index case. We didn't. Now we need a lockdown. We're preaching social distancing. Ayode says, I do not understand the country called Nigeria. I still saw planes flew in yesterday after the announcement of the closure of the airport. Well, that takes effect from today, as far as I understand.
I think midnight yesterday.
Yeah.
So the last planes should have landed last night.
Taya says the chicken has come to roost. Any small illness, they've flown out for treatments. They totally neglected the health sector. Now, which hospital will they use? They can't fly. Doctors can't be flown in. The slang, we die here, is very real now. Ifeanyi from Iba says, what if you self-isolate and your neighbors don't? Is it not effort in futility? Self-isolate first, and you limit the number of the spread or the chances of the spread. Dr. I at CMS says, I'm glad that our eyes are now open to the hubris of government and blind supporters of the government. It is crucial that we know our limitations so we can strengthen our weaknesses. First off, is that the government has not adequately informed the rural on uneducated people in Nigeria or even in Lagos. Tunde Okufi weighs in on this story. He actually said, there's a global shortage of ventilators. Countries are practically bidding against each other for the supply lines that exist. The UK's NHS has just over 8,000 ventilators, but needs at least 30,000. New York alone says it needs 40,000 ventilators. Nigeria, a country where people die from asthma, the shortage of ventilators is particularly worrying. COVID, let's not forget, is a respiratory disease. If we're waiting for global supply chains, I doubt we'll be prioritized or have the finance to outbid others for ventilators. We may need to urgently explore the possibility of local production. The CBN, as part of our response, has put in place a significant fund for those willing to produce medical equipment. And how far is that going to go? That's the next question. Anjiku says, I suggest we also shut down the motor parks to prevent interstate travelings. This would ensure that we prevent spread to other countries or other parts of the country. Thank you, Ejiku. And Obed Shuk says, sorry, Justin, did I hear you say we have 5 testing centers? Please, where are they? Because I only hear of 2, one in Abuja and the second in Lagos.
There's one in Ira in those states. There's, I think, two more somewhere in the west. I think Ogun State also. Before the show ends,
Interesting.
I'll read out those where those locations are.
Henry from Victoria Island says, "Why is it that the elite that politicians, religious leaders, business people, and the rich in all areas of human endeavor are the most problematic in this country? What would it take to subject yourself to a test or for a test? Personal, environmental hygiene and social distancing should be observed by all." Ifeanyi from Okwalisa from Iba says, "When some precautionary measures are observed, the markets and other areas are leaking, what will happen?" Senfajo says, "The enclosure was 11 p.m. What country does that? The hospital and healthcare that was rejected is where our leaders are meant to stay." And then we have more messages. Stephen from Surulere says, "As much as you can, hopefully it falls on receptive ears. Aggressively put in other people around you who see no reason to socially distance themselves. Avoid crowds and ultimately stay at home during these health-threatening times. Some people's fire of obdurate ignorance needs to be quenched. Keep talking to them until you discover they're hell-bent on taking the route of self-destruction. I kid you not. There are people who only graduated from university but are still enchanted by the deceptive beauty of nonchalance. As it stands, lockdown is inevitable, but for the sake of those who know what is at stake, keep talking to the born ignorant." Thank you, Stephen, for your message. Let's go to the next story. NSC closes trading floors to operate remotely. Some days ago, we mused about the United States move to shut down and test the remote working or e-trading for the first time in a while. Now, the Nigerian Stock Exchange is taking a similar step to curtail coronavirus spread.
Yeah, so this is the future of work, if you like, in the new reality. The technology has made it such that really there are collaborative tools where if your work, if you're in the knowledge sector that doesn't require manual labor, you can effectively discharge your responsibilities from home. So the stock exchange is taking advantage. They've announced a 30-day remote working regimen for their staff. So people are going to be their traders are going to be able to log on remotely and continue to trade. It takes effect from today, I think. Yeah. So I'm encouraging.
It actually starts tomorrow, Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, with effect from tomorrow.
Yes.
So I'm encouraging employers of labor, where your business model fits, please put remote working regimen in place for your staff. It's another way of keeping this thing in check while not necessarily shutting down the economy as much as is possible.
Yeah, but speaking about that, we already know the apparent realities of the challenges that all that.
Yeah,
remote working,
it won't work for the informal sector, clearly.
Not just informal
Auntie that fries akara to feed her family is not going to fry it.
It's not going to remote work, but I'm talking about but I'm talking about you and I. I mean, some of us who cannot afford 24 hours light, except we have money to buy fuel to fuel our generators.
It does have.
If the generators are working and not overborne by all the stress of how many times the NEPA has taken light.
Power,
that's one.
The cost of internet.
Thank you very much.
They are all challenges to it. But hey, these are trying times.
And then how do you track? Employers right now have to start, taking advantage of some of the technology apps that are available to track.
Yes. So let me talk about what I'm doing with my team. So we're using an app called Zoom. So Zoom actually allows you to collaboratively work. We have a teleconference in an hour.
That's right.
Right, and you will know who is online and who is offline.
That's video conference.
It's more. Zoom is a bit more than video conference. It allows you to share documents. Virtually, it's a virtual workspace.
That's free ad for them, but go on.
I mean, in the interest of the public welfare, yeah. So it allows you to share documents, share data, right, over an internet connection, and also see yourselves on video feeds. So it has a multi-screen layout where if you have 10 people logged on, you will see all 10 people on screen. So there are tools out there that you can effectively use.
Awesome. We have messages on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can also drop your message on my Instagram live at Valentine Ohu. Let's get your contributions in. Oluwatobi Ashekun says, thank you for your message. We're working on that. It says, Tajuddin says that there's an urgent need for Lagos State to shut down for at least 14 days so as to track and trace all upcoming cases. Frank Asien says, the population in the less urban areas is a call for concern if this virus should hit the grassroots because we're not ready for the pandemic. Olawale Ibironke says, do we have the capacity for people to work from home? ISPs on a good day are crappy. Do they even have the capacity to serve us all? Are we making contingency plans, especially now that the internet is about to slow down? People are reducing bandwidth to accommodate as much people. Well, let's move on. Still talking coronavirus. Well, we'll talk about the land borders being closed. Let's combine that conversation with the federal government's move to deploy military and police to track contact persons if it gets to a point where Nigerians do not observe that social responsibility that is called for at this time.
You see, this is where the issue of the law applying equally to everybody, right, becomes germane. And the tone is usually set from the top. So you have lawmakers, right? You don't need police and the military to track those ones. You know them. Are you going to make an example of anyone? Or is it that when less privileged people in the society break the law, then we bring the full force of the government to bear? When people who are in a position to set the tone do the same thing, what's going to happen? So I don't know who the police is going to and the army is going to be tracking, but hey,
those who they are
have at it. Planes were landing in this country up until yesterday. You failed to enforce mandatory isolation and quarantine, which is when it is controlled by the government, not when it's left to people's discretion. Government basically abdicated its responsibility. So if you send police and the military, I hope they will go around properly geared up in hazmat suits to be catching people, because they are not trained to handle people who are shedding viruses, right? So are they going to go there with their batons and their AK-47s and jackboot people into Black Marias, or are they going to go with an ambulance? How is it going to work?
It'll be interesting to see the modalities they're putting in place to get this person. But it's a matter of urgency. If one tests positive and you can locate them, the best thing to do immediately is just get them to the nearest healthcare clinic.
Authorities failed in their responsibility, but hey, people, let us be responsible. If you know that you should be checking yourself in, please do check yourself in. If you are a hotel and people, do not stigmatize people. I know of someone who checked into a hotel on arriving from the UK, and when they disclosed to the hotel after checking that they were isolating and they didn't want people coming around their room and all of that, and the hotel kicked them out. Okay, so that happened. That somebody tried to do the right thing and society making it difficult. Now, that's not the government's fault. But again, information sharing. People should be sensitized. Establishments like hotels and all of that should be sensitized. If it's possible for the government to go into public partnerships with such establishments to say, okay, we're going to take care of sanitizing your environment and all of that, but we need your hotel to quarantine for people to check into, that's fine. But hey, people, just do the right thing, please, for the sake of everybody. For the sake of everybody. But it's difficult when people at the top, both in the public service, elected officials, and religious leaders, are sending the wrong vibes to people. It is very, very bad. But people, use your heads. Don't leave your sense for house.
Messages, let's get to them. Chilexi says on Instagram Live here at Valentine, who said, we are missing something out here. We're ants just talking ventilators. There are intensive care units in hospitals.
The ICU beds.
How many hospitals can boast of having ICUs? That's a very critical question, Chilexi. Thank you. Let's get to WhatsApp. More messages here. This one is from Obiako. Steve, you're shaking the table. How do you apply social distancing in Alaba, Computer Village, Ajangbadi, Yanoba? There's so many of them. He said this is the time for a complete lockdown. No movement, no markets, etc. But that will be horrible in Nigeria. We're just between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
And Mr. T says, the claim that we should have shut down since, but you remember most of the population live on what they make daily. Do you think it's a challenge? Yes, it is. Mr. T, we are very aware of how challenging it is, which is why we're indirectly, trying to stimulate the government to think right, to see how they can provide some financial support. Let's just call it palliatives. Let's call it what it is. Financial support.
Exactly. Where's the money? Where's the money we were sharing during elections? Where is that money? People need it now. It's true now. Money was being shared. We called it all sorts of names. Empowerment program. People need that money now. Direct cash in their pockets. If you're going to have to lock down, you're going to have to give people money. You're going to have to maybe take control of supply chains. You're going to have to make sure that supermarkets and people are not hoarding goods and essential food stuff, right? That's what you have to do if we're going to go into a lockdown. It's looking like we have to do a lockdown, but the fallout of a lockdown will probably kill as many people as COVID might.
Can I ask a question? Just think of it. Do you think the federal government could redirect some of the funds that are putting into social intervention programs like NPower and some other programs, could divert some of those funds to distributing to Nigerians to support them through this
fund though, the money that they say Abacha has been paying us from the grave since so that they recovered. Where is the money?
Infrastructural development.
Which one?
That's what they said.
Which one? Where? Which infrastructure?
Roads. Power,
Roads. Which one?
health.
East West Road, Lagos Ibadan. Which
Yeah,
one?
some
Which
approvals have been made recently.
Ogbeni, they should bring the money and share it to Nigerians. We need the money now. The poorest of the poor need that money. They said they've been sharing 5,000 naira to the poorest families in Nigeria. I don't know any poor people,
happened.
but I don't know any family, right? But please, people need this money now. The people in Ajangbadi, the people in Abakaliki, all the people in the hinterland of Nigeria, they need this money. Let's hear the government talking about it. I heard they spent in the first few days. We spent 1.5 billion on what?
On who?
On who? Making public announcements? What was the money spent on?
Emeka asking the same question from Ajay. Says the federal government planning any relief stimulus for small and medium scale enterprises? Who pays staff salaries when sales are not coming?
Tax incentives for people who are keeping people on the payroll. Those are the kind of things. But hey, who are we even asking?
Dr. I has some ideas. Maybe that could answer some of our questions. First, it says start building isolation centers in stadiums or the big event centers. 2, have markets open on specific days for specific food. Actually, that's happening in South Africa right now. The president made an address and
Control the supply chain.
the supply chain and just give allowance for shopping 1 day a week, which will be supervised by the military. Interesting moves. The third one, private sector to close non-essential businesses. Number 4, money to companies to manufacture gloves, masks, water, and simple drugs, including hand sanitizers. I see a lot of local production that's not happening right now, which is interesting. Number 5, government to broadcast in all languages over radio and TV every 3 hours, giving tips and information on Corona.
My only problem is who will tell Baba all these things that I say. He's keeping malice with us.
No, he's not. He's still
Have
our
you seen
president.
I
Okwe
didn't
from
say he's not
Marina.
the president. I say he's keeping malice with us.
Okwe from Marina says some employers are adamant and won't imagine a situation where they won't see their staff. Remote working in a lot of cases won't require electricity and internet services. Would require. Who bears these costs? In any case, the life of both employer and employee should be placed over and above the business. I only hope my employer can review options than sticking to compulsory attendance. Okay, I'd like to ask, are you part of, does your company set up a closed user group of any sort? Because that's one of the ways that you can actually have effective remote working.
I mean, WhatsApp is a very basic way of doing it.
That's right. Ola from Agbara says activities at Apapa Port yesterday was halted for about an hour. Is the federal government going to close seaports? That would be devastating to the economy. And this one, please add your names to your messages. We would like to read them. Your number ends with 6036. He says Zoom stock has gone up during the pandemic because people are working from home. That's right. Okay. You bought before this whole thing started. Sharp guy. Bengals says it's really a shame that the police had to enforce the government directives in some churches on Sunday. Why? Watching the videos of how the virus has dealt seriously with people in Italy shows that it shouldn't be toyed with. Ironically, the pastors that flouted the order are the ones who are always quick to accuse the government of being lawless and criticize the government on almost everything. They are the ones that have shown gross lawlessness and impunity. The good thing is that this coronavirus has exposed the hypocrisy of these whalers. On YouTube, let's quickly snag in 1 or 2 messages. We have Kweju Adenka Adebayo saying people need to be educated about the virus and how it spread. It's so sad how a lot of supposed literates act ignorant. We need to sensitize the public, educate. Some of the symptoms we know: headaches, cough, dry cough, in severe cases, shortness in breath or difficulty breathing.
Well, you also need to acknowledge that a significant percentage of people who have the virus will remain asymptomatic.
Which
so
means they
really,
won't show
those
any
symptoms don't do much in terms of detection.
Yep. Thank you very much, Justin. You are a real guy. Thanks for stepping in this morning and your analysis on these stories. You can find him and continue the conversation with that hashtag FreshlyPress91 on social media. He's at Justin EJ. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay safe. Wash your hands. First, wash your hands as often as possible. Before eating, after eating, when you change diapers, if you have kids that need diaper change, before and after that. Just I can't hear you, please. And you just need to be proactive. If you're working in an office, such a surface, please wipe it down with a disinfectant or hand sanitizer, or rather, disinfectant wipes. Just let's observe self-hygiene. Personal hygiene is very important now.
Two loans from Page Financials.
Thanks
Page
for watching.
Financials,
Social responsibility.
taking you further.
Thanks.
Go offline.
Thank
The
you for
headlines.
joining us.
The
Good morning.
stories, the news,
Say thank you to you too.
in-depth analysis
Thank you,
of
YouTube.
national current affairs.
Bless you guys. James Bond Justin.